Shadowverse Evolve Booster Set 3 Flame of Laevateinn is soon to be on sale, and there is a lot of really good cards in this set, so let's break it down and go over every card that you might want to be picking up going into this set. We're going over a lot of cards today, so you know it is an impactful one. Jumping into the neutrals, we of course have none other than Alice Wonderland Explorer, one of the faces of the game I want to say, and a lot of people were quite worried. When Alice comes to evolve, what will she do? Everybody knows what happened in Wonderland Dreams. And she was very strong, but not too strong, so don't be too worried. Alice is a neutral card that collects Fabled counters and then removes Fabled counters from herself to give other followers Fabled counters instead. More on that later. She can evolve for a 1, allowing her to check the top 4 cards of your deck for 2 Fabled cards and put them in your EX area, and the rest goes to the bottom of your deck. And neutral already gives you some of the best Fable cards that you would want in any class. We have Actress Feria, who is a 1-cost 2/2 that you can engage to give another follower in your field a Fable counter. Humpty Dumpty, who is one of the faces of the deck for Haven, which is a 3/3/3 vanilla but evolves for 0 cost, letting you deal 5 damage to each follower on the field on evolve, deal 3 damage to each enemy leader, and discard your entire hand. This comes paired with the Explosion spell card, which is also a Fable, which lets you deal X damage to each follower in the field and each enemy leader. The followers include your own, by the way. X equals the number of cards named Explosion or Humpty Dumpty in your cemetery plus 1. So you want to go into a bunch of Humpty Dumptys and then Explosion your way for game. All of these cards are 3-ofs, including the evolve form, so make sure you pick up a playset of each of these. These neutrals will be must-haves for a very long time. But now you're probably thinking, okay, what can I use the Fable stuff in? Well, that's where we go to Forestcraft. Beauty and the Beast is going to be the featured legendary here, being a 6-cost 5/7 that has both Rush and Aura, and the Fable trait. She puts a Fable counter on herself on Fanfare, but if she was put in the field other than from hand, so for example, if Alice's effect puts her to the EX area and then you play her from the EX area to the field, she gets Storm. And as an effect, you can pay 1 play point and remove any number of Fable counters from her to give her +X, and the X equals how many you remove. So together with Alice, you can set her up to be a huge source of Storm damage. And she sports Aura, so she's kind of like Forte in that sense. This would be a 3-of. Magical Fairy Lilac is a Fable card that surprisingly can be used outside of Fable decks too. As a 3-cost 1/4, you can engage her to put a Fable counter on her and then pay 1 play point and remove a Fable counter from her to destroy an enemy follower. So she doesn't necessarily need you to pair her together with the other Fable cards, she just kind of sustains herself for that effect. Another good 3-of. Flower Princess is of similar fashion, being a 2-cost 2/3 that also has the Fable trait. On Fanfare, puts a fairy into your EX area, but on combo 3, puts a Fable counter on her as well. And you can engage her and remove that Fable counter in order to select enemy follower and deal 3 damage. Yet another self-sustaining Fable card. You can pair these together with the new cards or play her just on her own. Tweedledum Tweedledee is another Fable card that is a 2-cost 2/2 vanilla that evolves for 1, that on evolve lets you check the top 4 and find a cost 1 card from among them, add it to your hand, and put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. Forest has a lot of strong 1-cost targets, so this is going to be an auto-include into virtually any Forest deck. So we're going to pick up 3 of the original 2 of the evolve copy. Floral Breeze is a very good generic spell that lets you bounce a card on the field and restore 1 defense to your leader. Just another nice way to bounce your own stuff. There's going to be some future cards coming out that are going to be very good with this too, and also a bit of sustain as well. And finally, the 1-cost Woodland Band. This is an amulet that also has the Fable trait, which looks at the top 4 cards of your deck and puts a Fable from among them into your EX area. This can include both the neutrals we talked about as well as the Forest Fables, and the rest goes to the bottom in any order. And you can engage this and put it into the cemetery to choose a Fable follower in your field and put a counter on it. So overall, for Forest, the Fable cards are very nice in that they're very self-sustaining, but you can also use them in conjunction with the neutral package in order to make stuff like Beauty and the Beast even stronger. Both Floral Breeze and Woodland Band are 3-ofs, by the way. But of course, Fable isn't the only archetype that is in this set, because when we take a look at Sword, you'll get that mighty reminder that of course, Shadowverse Flame, which is peak by the way, you should 100% watch it, is also very much featured in this set, and Sword is one of the big winners when it comes to those Flame cards. Valiant Fencer is a must-have here, being a 3-cost 2/2 that on Fanfare searches your deck for a heroic card with a different name from Valiant Fencer and adds it to your hand. We'll go over those targets in a second. You can evolve for 1 play point, but you can only have 2 or less cards in your hand, so he truly only evolves in a pinch but when he does evolve, his stats become 5/5, and he chooses a heroic follower with evolve on your field and evolves it. Now we immediately have some very good combinations with this guy, but we can take a look at Amaro Spear Knight first. Being a 2-cost 2/2 that with strike gains +1/+1 as long as you have another heroic follower on your field. His normal evolve cost is 3, so it's super expensive, but thanks to Valiant Fencer you can evolve him for basically free, skipping that cost for Amaro to become a 3/3 that on evolve selects a heroic card in your cemetery and plays it for 0 play points. So not only have you saved a bunch of play points in evolving your Amaro, but now you have Valiant Fencer, Amaro, and another potential card on the field. And the best potential card to have on the field is Mach Knight. On Fanfare, he's a 3-cost 3/3 that if he's put on the field from anywhere other than your hand, he gets Storm. So when Amaro plays him from the cemetery, he does come in with Storm. And you can also evolve him for 1 play point to choose an enemy follower in the field, deal 2 damage, but if you have 2 or more heroic cards in your cemetery, deal 4 instead. And 4 is that sweet spot in Shadowverse Evolve where a lot of really good cards have 4 defense. So just like that, you get your Valiant Fencer on board, you have your Amaro up there as well. You empty out your hand by playing super aggressively, and then you get to bring back the Mach Knight as well. All 3 of these cards, you want 3 of the main body and 2 of the evolve form, because your evolve deck is going to be pretty packed with all of these. In order to support that aggro, we have Old Man and Old Woman, which is a 1-cost 1/2 with Bane. Just as a 1/2, it's already fine for a 1-cost for aggro, but that Bane is really annoying for your opponent to deal with, this being a really good card to just plop down early to rush down your opponent. Now, of course, a lot of these heroic cards want more heroic cards in your cemetery, so Iron Rod Defender is a great inclusion, being a 1-cost 2/2 that as long as you have 2 heroic cards in your cemetery or more, gets +1 defense and ward on Fanfare. 1-cost 2/3 with ward is pretty ridiculous. Definitely want to pick up 3 copies of that together with Heroic Entry, which is a 3-cost spell that lets you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, put a sword follower that costs 3 play points or less from among them onto your field, and if it's heroic, give it +1/+1. The rest goes to the bottom of your deck in any order, but this also plays Mach Knight from outside of your hand, so it also gives Mach Knight Storm with the extra power. You can of course also bring out things like Amaro and then just Amaro hard evolve into it too, and what's crazy is that Amaro on evolve selects a heroic card in your cemetery and plays it for 0 play points, so you can also use Amaro to play Heroic Entry to try to fish for more heroic cards if you haven't seen something like your Mach Knight yet. Sword is one of the biggest winners in this set, and Hero Sword is going to be a name you're going to hear a lot in the coming months. Moving on to Runecraft, which of course is another big winner, not just because of strength of cards, but also because of the beautiful collab arts. Millie Parfait from Nijisanji, of course, is the English exclusive collab for Runecraft in this set that nobody's ever seen before in any other version of Evolve. And honestly, even if you're not a Rune player, I would pick these up for collection. The leader card looks absolutely stunning. Her parallel art of Wizardess of Oz is simply beautiful as well. I'm a huge fan of Gingerbread House with the It's a Sweets buffet too. This one's going to be great for Earthright decks, by the way, so you definitely want to pick up 3 of those. And the Witch's Cauldron alt art is also beautiful. Like all of these arts, I would just pick up 1 of each just to collect. But Witch's Cauldron is also an amazing card for Earthright, being a top 4 searcher for Earthright cards, while also having stack. But enough gushing about the art, there's also these beautiful tokens you can pick up, I'm just saying. We have another very powerful archetype in this set coming from Shadowverse Flame, which is Chess Rune. Mystic King is the trump card of this archetype, being a 6-cost 5/5 that lets you put a chess follower from your field into your cemetery to choose an enemy follower in the field, deal it 5 damage, but then you cannot activate his abilities except for evolve. But when you do evolve for 2 play points, he chooses up to 4 chess followers with different names that cost 4 play points or less in your cemetery and puts them back onto your field. And we're gonna go through them. There's a lot of really strong ones in here. So not only do you get removal, you also get board spam, which is really good. So for Mystic King, you want like 2 to 3 copies of the main body and 2 of the evolved one. For the gold rarity cards, we have Milady Mystic Queen, who on Fanfare summons a magical pawn token, which you'll notice a lot of these cards do, and also puts one into your EX area. So magical pawn, of course, was from the previous set. That is a 2/1 chess follower, no other effects. But being a 4-cost 2/2, she evolves for 1 play point, becoming a 3/3 that on evolve deals X damage to an enemy follower, which equals the amount of chess followers on your field. So you can, for example, bring her back with Mystic King, and since you have a full board of chess followers, evolve her for 1 and just ping something off the board. I would say 3/2 lineup of her. Check is one of the spells that is also chess attribute for 3 cost, lets you select an enemy follower in the field, deal it 4 damage, and check top 3 of your deck for a chess card with a different name from check, and add it to your hand. So you get a searcher on top of having ways to take out your opponent's board. I would say 3 copies of this if you're playing chess too. Magical Knight is another very strong card, being a 3-cost 3/2 that gets +1 attack every time a chess follower is put into your field, which again will stack like crazy for Mystic King. And if you evolve him for 1, he also becomes a 4/4 that summons a magical pawn token, which again fuels that +1 attack of his. So even if you don't play this with Mystic King, you can already get a 5/4 just from evolving him basically. Magical Rook is a 1-cost 2/2 that as long as you have a magical pawn in your EX area gets +1 defense and ward, and is similar to Iron Rod Defender. And Magical Bishop is a 2-cost 1/2 that puts a pawn into your EX area, and at the start of your end phase, as long as you have another chess follower on your field, deals 1 damage to each enemy leader and restores 1 defense to yours. So it's another great card just to have to accelerate your game plan, and who knows, that extra ping damage might come in handy sometimes. And for the last chess card, we have Blitz, which is a 1-cost spell that selects enemy follower in the field and deals it X damage. X equals the number of cards named magical pawn on your field +2. So even if you don't have any, it's going to deal 2 damage for a 1-cost. That's already pretty good. Doesn't have quick on it, but it's a pretty good removal spell. All of these chess cards, if you want to play chess, are 3-ofs, with Magical Knight's evolved version being a 2-of. But even if you're not a chess player, let me tell you that you should definitely pick up Mr. Heinlein's Shadow Mage, as he will be vital in the future for spell chain decks, particularly from set 6 onwards. On Fanfare, he mills the top 4 cards of your deck and recovers X play points equaling the number of spells you milled. So you play him for 5, mill 4 spells, suddenly he's a 1 play point 4/4. But you can also engage and discard a spell 4 to select enemy follower in the field and deal 4 damage. So that also fuels your spell chain, so he does a lot for the deck. So Rune overall is getting pretty good. You got a really strong archetype. We'll talk about chess lists in a future video, but you're also getting really good support for existing archetypes like Earthright and Spellchain. Now moving into Dragon, here, I can finally talk about a card that's been my MVP ever since this set came out. Draconeer Knuckle Dragon. He's a 3-cost 3/3 that on Fanfare summons a Draconic Weapon token, which lets you basically just attach it to a dragon follower and give it +1 defense and the arm trait. And then if you evolve Draconeer for 1 play point, he becomes a 4/4 that selects enemy follower in the field, deals it 2 damage, but if you have another arm follower in your field, deals 4 damage instead. He's kind of similar to Mach Knight's condition on Evolve too, which is interesting between all of these flame cards. But he's a really good generic card. You might be thinking, oh, but he's armed, you need to have an armed follower. Don't forget that the Dra Weapon makes something an armed follower, so you just need to attach it to virtually anything and you get the 4 damage. So it's really easy to bring out. This is really good to play against board-based decks, and it's going to be just super good generic in Dragon in the future, so definitely pick up 3 copies of the pre-evo and 2 to 3 of the evolve version. Another really good generic card is Dragon Summoner. She's a 2-cost 1/3 that's basically a vanilla, but she evolves for 1. And on evolve, she looks at top 3 for a dragon follower and adds to your hand. The rest goes to the bottom of your deck, but basically she's a nice way to like connect into a forte, connect into other good pieces of your deck. And there'll be future cards that really like running 3-cost or lower dragon followers in the deck, so she's going to be one of those big contenders. Now there are quite a few dragon cards in this set that are kind of just like good in niche decks / have some potential future support. So for example, Jabberwock, the legendary, is a funny little card with a 7/7/7 that basically puts a follower from your field into your cemetery on Fanfare, shows the top card of your deck, and then you repeat that reveal process until you find a follower that costs more than the follower you put into the cemetery for as effect, and you put it into your field. So you can build some interesting decks where you can like basically remove like another 7-cost or 8-cost from your field and then like confirm a Genesis Dragon off of this no matter what that like swings for big damage. You can use this in conjunction with Forte as well. And the interesting thing is, for example, if you send a 3-cost and then everything in your deck that's 4-cost or above is, let's say, like Forte and bigger things, that will either get you a Forte or another huge card onto the field. And you can also attack with that lower cost follower first and then get rid of it with Jabberwock. So that's an interesting card. There have been some interesting Jabberwock decks running around in Japan, so I'm curious what people in the English version will cook up too. Now, Laevateinn Dragon is also a personal favorite of mine. I think everyone that plays Shadowverse, whether it's the app version or Evolve, knows, as long as you're watching Shadowverse Flame, which you should be because it's peak, knows that Laevateinn Dragon gets a bunch of other forms in the anime, a bunch of other support cards in the anime, and so everyone's just kind of asking themselves, when is this going to come to the app version? When is this going to come to Evolve? So I am a full investor of Copium. I own copious amounts of Copium stocks, case. And I want to say that Laevateinn Dragon is something that you probably should pick up for future-proof in case, because I feel like definitely all these enemy decks should get support eventually. So I'd say maybe like 3 copies of the base form and then like 1 or 2 of the evolved ones. As for Jabberwock, it was like a 3 of. Now there's also a bunch of cards that saw use in aggro versions of Dragon. So we had Master of Draconic Arts, who is a 3-cost 2/4 that has Assail and Ward, and on Fanfare, if Overflow is active for you, he gets +4 attack and rush. So 3-cost 6/4 is nothing to scoff at. So he should be a 3 of. Hammer Dragon Newt saw some use in aggro decks too as a 3/3. There's a 2-cost 2/2 that on Fanfare looks at top 4 for an armed spell and adds to your hand, and the rest goes to the bottom of your deck. And if you evolve him for 1 cost, he lets you deal 2 damage to each enemy leader. So it's pretty good. I mean, just on Evo, deal 2 damage is already nice for an aggro deck. And one of the spells you can find is Draconic Smash, which you would also want to pick up as a 3 of in this case, which is a 2-cost quick spell that lets you choose an enemy follower in the field and deal 3 damage and summons a Draconic Weapon, which you can again use in conjunction with a lot of the armed cards or just give more extra defense to the other cards in your field. Lance Lizard is another armed card you can play, which is a 3-cost 3/4 that, as long as Overflow is active for you, summons a Draconic Weapon. I like calling them just draw weapons, like rolls off the tongue a bit easier. And once during your turn, when he's selected by an ability, he gets +1 attack and deals 1 damage to enemy leader. So he kind of like self-funds his own thing with Overflow. Another 3 of here. And Armor Burst is the last 3 of I would recommend for aggro dragon, letting you put one of your armed followers into your EX area and deal 3 damage to an opposing follower while bringing out Draconic Weapons. Moving on to Abyss. Abyss got some really good support this set, not just with the Flame archetype and Fabled archetype, but just in general. Like, a lot of this stuff can go into aggro Abyss, it can go into control Abyss, and of course one of the cards that is particularly good in the app version of Shadowverse right now, Dark Alice, is definitely a big feature here as well. She's a 6-cost 6/6, which seems very fitting for a dark version of Alice, that has Rush, and on strike forces each opponent to discard a card. And on top of that, if she gets taken out, her last words lets you banish the top 10 cards of your deck to put her back onto your field, but you discard a card. So what's cool is that if you do this during your opponent's turn, she can bring herself back still during your opponent's turn and therefore attack during yours. And the strike doesn't just work on followers either, it also works on your opponents. So if she attacks and you force them to discard like their 1 card in hand is their quick spell they wanted to use to get rid of her, well, tough luck. She's quite good in control variants, so definitely pick up like 2 or 3 copies. If you're going in on Ghost Shadow, especially if you were someone that played in the app version recently, Masquerade Ghost will be a pickup too. Being a 4-cost 4/4 that gives +1 attack to any ghost that goes into your field is pretty huge because all ghosts have Storm, and you can also evolve him for 1 play point, turning him into a 5/5 that still buffs your ghosts, but on top of that, whenever your ghost leaves your field, as they naturally do by their own effect, it summons our Gargantuan Ghost token, which is a 3/3 with Ward that stays there until the start of your main phase. And the best part is he's kind of undying, so that even if you take him out, his last words puts him into your EX area, so you can just bring him back and evolve into him again. So I think you want to pick up 3 of the base copy and then like 2 or 3 of the evolve version. For some Fable cards, Odile Black Swan sees some use in various types of Abyss decks, being a 5-cost 6/4, which is pretty good in stats. On Fanfare, she deals 2 damage to each enemy leader and enemy follower in the field, but if you have 20 or more cards in your cemetery, she gets Storm. And then when she attacks on strike, she deals 2 damage to each enemy leader and enemy follower in the field again. So if you get all the effects off, she's basically dealing 10 damage to your opponent's leader with her Storm and effect damage combined. So she's like a 2 or a 3 of. She's really good for control if you can stretch it out into the late game and get that Necro Charge 20. Demonium Punk Devil saw a lot of use in various Abyss archetypes as well, being a 2-cost 2/3 that has Ward and lets you deal 2 damage to yourself to give him Bane, and then on last words he restores the 2 damage anyway. So you basically have a Ward that is really low cost and also has Bane, so being able to carry that threat is really nice in a lot of different variants. I'd say 3 copies of him is pretty good. And then if you are building ghosts, then Bacchus is a must as well. It's a 1/1/1 that, as long as you have Gargantuan Ghost on your field, draws you a card. It's also treated as a ghost too, so that means he'll be buffed up by Masquerade Ghost, and when he leaves the field, he'll also summon a Gargantuan Ghost from Masquerade Ghost effect. But you can also evolve Bacchus for 1, which gives him the last words effect to put him into the owner's EX area. So that basically lets you reuse that effect together with your Masquerade Ghost, so they're truly undying ghosts. Mischievous Zombie is also another good card, being a 2-cost 2/2 2 on Fanfare lets you discard a card to summon a ghost, and if you discard a departed card, draws you a card, so you don't even lose a card from it. The evolve cost is a bit steep, being 2, but on evolve, he gives a ghost on your field Bane. So overall, I'd say picking up 3 copies of the base form and 2 copies of the evolve form is pretty good if you're building Masquerade Ghost. And finally, Devilish Flautis is a 3-cost 3/3 with Rush that on Fanfare discards a random card from your own hand to get +1 attack and drain. Pretty good in more control versions of Abyss that have bigger hand size and want to drag out the game. Another 3 of. And finally, I feel like I've kept you guys waiting because Haven is the biggest winner in this set of all classes, being the class that can use Alice by far the best. But of course, we're not going to look at Alice stuff just yet because I have a personal favorite. As a big Tsubasa fan from Shadowverse Flame, I have to talk about Diamond Master. Diamond Master is a 4-cost 2/5 that basically brings in more support to Ward Haven, which is an archetype that's going to get future support and kind of become an archetype in future sets. But on Fanfare, she chooses one of the following: either gives herself Storm or Ward. But the really interesting thing about her is that whenever your opponent selects cards for an ability, they have to select her. We've seen cases from Shadowverse Grand Prix where Haven players play against Forest. The Forest player tries to Silver Bolt the opponent for game, but they can't because Diamond Master will eat all the damage and the Forest player literally cannot win. So you have Storm damage or potentially a Ward that's just chilling on your board that also basically prevents you from being hit by effects. You can also evolve her for 3 play points to select a follower with Storm or Ward that costs 3 play points or less in your cemetery and put it back onto your field. And now she's a 4/7, potentially with Storm, that has put out another card with potentially Storm onto your field. One of the potential targets is Wingy Chirpy Gemstone, one of the most popular characters from Flame, being a 1-cost 1/1 that has Ward. You can evolve it for 2, and on evolve, it searches your deck for a follower with 2 attack or less and adds it to your hand. Diamond Master has only 2 attack on her base form despite going up to 4 on evolve. So I would say if you want to invest into Ward in the future, or the Storm OTK deck in the future, or you're just a big Tsubasa fan like me, I'd say 3 2 Diamond Masters and 3 2 Wingies is a pretty good pickup. But alright, I've kept you waiting for long enough. Let's take a look at these amazing Haven Fable cards. Odette White Swan, of course, we had the Black Swan earlier, is a bit different. She's a 5-cost 4/6 that restores 2 defense to your leader and each other follower on your field on Fanfare, and then does the same thing on Last Word. So she's very good for just lasting out long games, which you definitely need sometimes. So she's a 3 of, and again, just because she's a Fable card, Alice can target her. But one of the most important cards is Alice's Adventure. It's a 2-cost amulet that on Fanfare searches your deck for a Fable card and adds it to your hand. So this is a Alice Searcher. This can also search your Explosion, it can search your Humpty Dumpty, and the best part is that for 1 play point and putting it to the cemetery after engaging it, you can select a Fable follower on your field and give it Rush and Assail. So in case you don't have Humpty Dumpty yet, or you're waiting for your opponent to go wide on board and you just want to take out one big thing, you can use that effect to also clear out board space. So it's a very good card, but mostly for that search ability. Being a confirmed Alice Searcher is huge. This is basically like extra 3 copies of Alice in our deck, so definitely 3 copies. The 4-cost amulet March Hare's Tea Time is another great searcher, looking at the top 5 cards of your deck on Fanfare to find a Fable follower that costs 5 play points or less right onto your board is really strong because of course that can target Alice. But for 2 play points and putting it to the cemetery after engaging it, you can choose a Fable follower that costs 3 play points or less from your cemetery and put it into your field. Once again, this can target Alice and Humpty Dumpty. Very, very strong card. But now you're thinking like, okay, Alice is searching stuff and you know, she rotates those freaking Fable counters, but what am I doing with those Fable counters in Haven? The answer is Tin Soldier. 3-cost 3/4 that as long as it was put onto the field from anywhere other than the hand on Fanfare puts a Fable counter on himself, and not once per turn, lets you remove a Fable counter from him to select an enemy follower or enemy leader and deal it 2 damage. So yes, if you stack 5 Fable counters on this card, he will indeed deal 10 damage to your opponent's leader that cannot be responded to because it's not an attack. Tin Soldier is basically what makes this deck so good, and one of the main cards you want to hit from your Alice, because that way if you play it from EX area, it is not counted as from hand, so you automatically get a Fable counter on it, and all of Alice's Fable counters want to be moved to Tin Soldier as well usually. Tin Soldier is a must-have 3 of, and this will be one of the best decks in the meta for a little while. Another great Fable card is Pinion Prince, being a 5-cost 4/5 that on Fanfare chooses a Fable card from your cemetery, puts it to your EX area, and puts a Fable counter on it. So, I mean, you can bring back Alice, but you can just put a Tin Soldier back in, put a Fable counter on it, and then play that Tin Soldier from EX area, gets another Fable counter on it, and there's 4 damage coming out of nowhere. On top of that, Pinion Prince can evolve for 1 play point to gain a Sail, being a 5/6 that can take out a lot of annoying followers, and is also another great target for Atlas. We do have a bit more Storm Ward support here, Ruby Falcon being one of them, which is a 3-cost 3/3 with Ward, that for 2 play points can gain Storm, by the way. That deals 1 damage to your opponent's leader whenever another follower you control with Storm or Ward attacks. Another great conjunction with Diamond Master. Keep in mind he cannot be searched by Wingy though, but he does evolve for 1 play point, letting you deal 2 damage to an enemy follower on evolve. So I would say he's like a 3/2 pickup. And the final card that also works very well with the Storm Ward archetype is Amethyst Lion. A 2-cost 2/1 with Storm, which already is pretty good, you know, 2-cost 2 attack Storm is nice. That on Fanfare gives another follower with Storm or Ward on your field +1 attack. So you can immediately buff up your Diamond Master or the Ruby Falcon and swing in for more damage. And that is it. Those are the must-have cards, in my opinion, for this set, and is definitely a lot. There's some really amazing archetypes from this set, like Alice, Haven, Hero Sword. Forest won the Japan Championships that was in this set's meta. That was a super slept on deck, but ended up being one of the biggest hitters. Chess Rune is amazing. Dragon has some great generic support. Abyss has amazing support all across the board. This set is really good for every class, so I highly recommend picking up a lot of these cards. But with that, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe. Otherwise, that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.